Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta. As we are post-draft, we're going to take a look back at what the Falcons did the draft, the good, the bad, the ugly of all of it, thoughts, grades, everything that you could want for draft coverage. And Braves started an important series tonight, and this was not a good 9-game stretch for the Braves. And I think that there are some times now to have a little bit of concern. So all next, it's Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We always thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you so much to all of the new subscribers, and thanks so much for checking out our content, especially over the weekend with a busy NFL draft. You wanted to get some quick reaction. We try to give that to you. So thank you so much. Head over to our YouTube channel. Put in your browser box in YouTube, Locked On Sports Atlanta. Subscribe. Give us a review. Tell us what you think. I read through all the comments, so appreciate everybody's feedback on all of that. And, of course, you can follow me on my Twitter page at JMCH316. Falcons complete their draft. I thought it was a good weekend. I thought it was a good draft overall from the Falcons. My question still goes back to the philosophy of what the Falcons are doing. You know, we talked the other day on Friday about the Drake London pick, and it has nothing to do with Drake. Wouldn't have mattered if it was Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, whatever, Treylon Burks, insert whatever wide receiver you would have put in at pick number 8. It's the philosophy of what they're doing. Now, I know first pick, second round, they actually traded up to get Arnold Ebiketie, the defensive end out of Penn State, which it made a lot of sense. I mean, you had to go get that guy. I would have liked Logan Hall, who went at the very top of the second round, but I like the Ebiketie. I liked overall what they did. I like the players of London, Ebiketie, Troy Anderson, especially love Desmond Ridder. In fact, I'll probably tell you that my favorite pick in this draft is Desmond Ridder because of where they got him and the fact that they weren't afraid to take quarterback. I think a lot of people weren't sure about whether or not the Falcons would take quarterback and where they would take quarterback. To get Desmond Ridder, who, was projected to be toward the top of the second round, to get him where they did, kid's a winner, man. I mean, say what you will. I don't know what exactly his upside is. I don't know what he can be in the league. I don't know if he can lead you to a championship. I love the fact that he said he's coming here to win a Super Bowl. It's what I want to hear out of my quarterback. That's what I want to hear. But here's what I do know. He took a program that had been pretty good. Remember, Cincinnati was pretty good under Brian Kelly. Now, that's where Brian Kelly had come from before he went to Notre Dame. And remember, Tim Tebow's final game was against Cincinnati. So they had a pretty good football program, and they were looked at kind of as a stepping stone program. Luke Fickell comes in, brings in Ritter and Sauce Gardner and all these guys, Majah Walker and all these guys, and they find themselves in the national semifinal. And they have a really good team, had a really good roster. But Ritter's a guy who lifted that program up and brought them to a national prominence. I think there's something to be said about that. And he's got a lot of experience, and he's played a ton in college, and he's played against high caliber competition. He's played against Georgia. He's played against Alabama. He's played against Notre Dame. He's played against a lot of top tier schools. It's not like he's only playing against whatever, inferior competition. So I like the pick and where they got him. I do like especially D'Angelo Malone. He's the defensive end out of Western Kentucky. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't know a ton about D'Angelo Malone, but I do know that he set the school record for sacks. Now, you give me a guy who sets his school record in a category that I'm desperately looking for, I'll take that all day long. Tyler Algier obviously was good enough that they decided to move on from Mike Davis. That was the breaking news we got this morning, that the Falcons are moving on from Mike Davis. Algier is a guy who very productive in college, took that nice step that you like to see in running backs. A couple of years ago, remember, they had Zach Wilson running that offense, certainly a throw-first offense, but he was still an 1,100-yard running back in that offense. blossom into 1,600 yards and almost 30 touchdowns this year. He's a definite factor. He doesn't have too much tread on the tires, so it's not like he's got massive beat-up factor. He played a lot in college. He's a 4-year guy in college, so even though he's only like a redshirt sophomore, he was actually a 4-year player for BYU. So very productive. Again, you're looking for a guy. Can he come in and be a third down back? Can he come in and give your back? Can he be an RB2 and give a guy a spell? Maybe be a short yardage guy, catch a few balls out of the backfield. He caught 42 passes his last 2 years total in college. So that's not a bad number in college. So maybe he can kind of help, from that perspective. Justin Schaefer, look, he's an interior lineman where they really need help. And he's a legitimate interior lineman. Can he compete and run with Jalen Mayfield? I don't know. But I know that he fits a profile of what they need. He's very physical, very tough on the offensive line. He's a guy that is going to at least get a shot. And again, another guy who played for a great program, right? In fact, it was crazy to think that the Falcons actually drafted Georgia players in back-to-back picks, right? Justin Schaefer was the 190th pick overall, and then tight end John Fitzpatrick was the 213th pick overall. Look, Fitzpatrick's a guy who, remember Lee Smith last year? Okay, you got a younger Lee Smith is what you got. I don't know what those guys are going to be. I'm going to be curious to see what Justin Schaefer can do. Now, I want to talk for a minute about Troy Anderson because I really like this pick. And what's funny about Troy Anderson, and he's a linebacker out of Montana State. He played quarterback, fullback, linebacker, this, that, and the other. He's done a little bit of everything. And when you are at a level of like Montana State, you do have to do a little bit of everything, right? If you're a great athlete, those kinds of programs are going to ask you to do a lot of different things. You're going to be asked to play a lot of different roles out there. Now, I don't know if he starts right away because you look at whether it's Micah Walker, obviously Deion Jones, they signed Rashaan Evans, Zoe Carter. They've got a lot of guys to play linebacker right now. But Anderson is certainly a guy with his physical tools that is going to be part of the rotation. Probably a special teams guy initially, and I know people don't like to hear that, but to be frank with you, that's where a lot of guys early on in their career have to make their bones in the NFL, is you have to make your bones as a special teams player, unless you're like a first-round pick. I mean, then that's a little bit different. But Anderson is a guy with a big motor, highly productive. He runs fast, and physically, 6'4", he'll probably play at the 240 range. The problem you're having right now with Deion Jones, and this is why the Nakobe Dean narrative didn't fit with the Falcons. Deion Jones is a smallish middle linebacker who in Dean P's scheme, when blockers are coming up at him, he has trouble taking on those blockers, and he's getting blocked out of plays. When he's got hosses up front and he can run around in space, then he's got what he needs to do. Go sideline to sideline, cover a guy here, do this, and then he's fine. But when guys are coming up at him and he has to take those blockers on, that's where he has trouble. That's where Anderson can sort of change a little bit of that mold. Now, Anderson's quick enough that he can run and he can cover as well, and he can play in some space. But when you're talking about coming up and pushing, with blockers coming up into that second level, Anderson's a guy who can take some of those guys on. The problem with Nakobe Dean, by the way, is that he's a smaller version of Deion Jones. Why he has a shot to do well in Philadelphia is because you have Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox. You have space eaters in the front line of your defense. They are a very strong defensive line. So a guy like Nakobe Dean can roam around back there and do the things that he needs to do without having to take on a lot of blockers coming up at him. Deion Jones in this system with the three-man front isn't able to do that. So Anderson is a guy that I'm very much intrigued by. If you want to ask me what my favorite pick is Desmond Ridder. If you want to know the pick I'm most intrigued by, that's Troy Anderson, the linebacker out of Montana State. Now, when we get back, we'll talk more about the Falcons. We'll talk about the grades. We'll talk about philosophy. We'll kind of get a little bit deeper into what this means and what this roster starts to look like. It is Jon Chuckery, hitting hard on Locked On Sports Atlanta.